All right, so right now let's plan something out. So we are going to build a form just like this, which is going to give us an opportunity to enter records to our database. Okay, so in this particular form, we'll be gather all the data from the user. Then once you click on add, we are going to push it to our database. So this particular form we need to create, isn't it? So we need to create a form. So let me go there to my notepad, and right here, okay, these things we have not planned it out, isn't it? So we just coded directly the query or the select wala statement. Okay, so for the select we have just directly coded, we have not planned things much. This, okay, I'm sorry about it, but this time I'll go with step by step. So right now the goal here is insert a record. That means insert a student record to the database. Okay, so if I want to do that, if I want to insert a student record to the database, or I can say to the student table. So first of all, what I need to do, first of all, as I have shown you, we'll be creating a form. So first thing is create a form, and we'll be creating this particular form by using JSP. Okay, and maybe we can say something add student. Okay, our JSP page name is going to be this, add student.jsp maybe, and obviously to view this particular JSP we need to create a controller. So we can say the number one is going to be create a controller which is going to show this JSP page. Okay, so create a controller handler method to display the this particular JSP page, our student.jsp. Okay, so basically if you remember, we already have a controller called student controller, right? We'll create another handler method just like this. To this only I'm saying handler method, so we'll be creating an handler method just like this, which is going to display the JSP page that we'll be creating, that's called add student.jsp, which is going to look something just like this. All right, so this is the step number 2. Okay, so there you go. So yes, so that's pretty much it, isn't it? So let's go ahead and let's create this particular page. So I will swing back to my Eclipse, and right here I am going to close everything. First of all, I really don't want this thing right now. I will close everything. I'll go to my controller. I'll also make sure that I'll stop my server, otherwise it is going to, okay, let me open my server, that's not a problem. But right now I can bring my console to here, so if it will be keep reloading, the reload will happen here and it will not bug me much. So I will go to my controller right now, student controller. I'll go here. So right here I'll be creating a handler method. As I said, I have told you here, we will be creating a controller handler method, which is going to return this particular page, right? So let me do that. So right here, I will basically, let me copy this method and let me do Control V. Let me get rid of all this thing. And right now, let me change the method name to add student. And obviously, let me say the URL to show student, so add student page or something. And right here, I don't need the model right now. Whenever we'll be needing the model, we'll be writing it. And this is going to return me a page. What is the page name we have given? Add student.jsp. Copy that. Okay, come back here to your Eclipse and paste it here. Okay, so there you go. So we will have a method here. This method is going to help us to view this particular page. So whenever somebody is going to hit this URL, we are going to get this particular page. Obviously this page does not exist right now, so we have to create one. So I'll do right click, new, and I will be creating a new JSP file. So let me create a new JSP file. Let me name it as rstudent.jsp, and I'll do finish. But hold on, I can see a mistake in my controller. I don't need to say add student.jsp. I can remove it because my view resolver is going to append that .jsp for me, isn't it? So I'll go to rstudent.jsp, and here I need to create the HTML form. Okay, so I'll say create a HTML form where the user can enter data. All right. So basically we'll not be creating a HTML form. We'll be creating a Spring form. And I assume that you guys know how to create a Spring form. What is the model attribute? What is the Spring MVC form tag? I assume you know about it. If you do not know about it, again, go back to the Spring MVC intermediate course, learn about creating form, using Spring MVC form tag, all this stuff I have discussed step by step right there. So right here, I'm directly going to code it out, and I will not explain much on those things. Okay, I think those things are pretty simple, and I hope that you can understand them. I already have videos available. I don't want to waste your time. So at least the time of those people who have already completed those courses, because for them, otherwise it is going to be really, really boring. Okay. So I don't want to bore you guys. I want to make you feel excited because we are going to write some really amazing code here. Okay. So this code are going to be really helping you to understand the structure, to understand the flow, how you're going to handle, basically whenever you'll go to your company and you will see something, how to read your code, how to deal with them. This particular project will make you comfortable with those kind of scenarios. So surely stick with me, let me go step by step, and I'll be explaining everything to you. Okay, so right now let's go ahead and let's create a Spring form. Okay, so obviously to create a Spring form, I'll be using the Spring MVC form tag, and I need to write the tag lib for this. So I will go back to my Safari browser, and I'll look for Spring MVC form tag, tag lib. Okay, so I can copy that from somewhere. So javapoint.com, do they have this? Yes, I need this tag lib. I don't want to type it manually. Okay, you know how good I am with my spelling. So I make a lot of typo, and I really don't want to make another one. So there you go. This is going to be my Spring MVC form tag, and right now I can use form : form, and there you go. So I can create my Spring MVC form just right here. So right now we will be we will be writing something just right here. Let's say input, let me use a form input, and the first field name is going to be what? The first field name is going to be name. So the path is equal to name. Okay, the path, where we will get the path, we need to create a DTO, isn't it? This path will read the value from the model attribute. So I need to also write a model attribute over here. The model attribute, we need to send it from the backend. So basically, we need to build the model attribute first, isn't it? Because once we give the model attribute just right here, it is going to read and write the for the input that we'll be creating. Let's say we're going to create an input right now, a label, and the first label is going to be name. And for this name, we should get a text box just like this. Okay, just like this, a text box. And from where this is going to read and write the value? Obviously from a DTO. So we have to specify that DTO object just right here. So obviously we'll be sending that DTO object from the backend. So while we are sending our student, whenever we are displaying our student, before displaying that, we need to create a model, isn't it? Model. And in this model, we need to send an attribute, model.add attribute. And this attribute is going to be something, and the value for this attribute is going to be a student object, isn't it? A DTO. So we need to create a DTO so that we can map that DTO attribute to this particular path. I think you are getting it, what I'm trying to say. If you're not comfortable with creating Spring forms, go back to the Spring MVC intermediate course and see the form videos, okay, how to create forms, okay. I will not help you on this because I have already told you guys, and I trust you guys that you have already gone through that and you already understand how does the Spring form works, okay. So basically right now, let me do one thing. I already have a Pojo here, isn't it? Student.java. This particular Pojo we are using for our DB purpose. These are basically our DB ID, name, mobile, country. Let's do one thing, guys. We can also use this guy as a DTO, okay? But let's not use it because we are using it for our DB purpose, and this is our entity, and let's say right now, if I'll create this object, student object, and if I will send it to my art student page, I can say here new student. I can say here new student. What is this? Student. I can do that. Okay. Now I can say here student, and this student will be going to here. And right now here inside this art student page, just right here, I can use the model attribute. What is the model attribute I'm sending from there? The model attribute I'm sending is student. Let me copy that. Let me go there. Let me do Control V in the model attribute. Okay, and there we go. Right now the path I can write ID. Okay, because this student is my student object. If you remember, this student here I'm sending from my controller, and this is actually having a student object, right? And inside this student object we have an ID. Obviously whatever the ID value will be, if there is any default value, that default value will appear here. Okay, and also if you are going to type something inside the text box, and once you do submit, this particular value will be binded to this particular ID. Okay, but why I don't want to use this guy, this student class as my DTO? Because this student, basically I'm using it for my entity purpose, for my DB purpose. This is my domain object, and I do have my column name written exactly same as the variable, isn't it? If you remember, if you go to our database right now, where is our database? Okay, ID, name, mobile, country, all these column names are exactly same as this, and I really don't want to expose it to the outer world, and obviously to the front end. I don't want to expose this variable name. I do not want the hackers to know about my DB column name, because this particular Pojo does contain my column name. So I don't want a hacker to know about this thing. So let's create a different class. Okay, this class is there only for my entity purpose. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here, let me close this. Let me not use this. Let me create a new class. Let me say this class as let me create a new class first of all. What is the class? So I want to create a class. Let me say this class a DTO. Let me say student DTO. I could have named this student class as student entity. That's because it is getting used by the DB. Right now this is going to only be used to transfer the data from front end to back end, and that's it. Okay, so this is only going to help me to transfer the data. So that's why it's a data transfer object. It's going to help me to transfer the data. You're going to see how. So I'm going to do finish here. Right here I can create few variables. These variables I'll be creating by looking at my form. My form has three fields: name, mobile, and country. So I'll go ahead and create it just right here. Private int. What are the things I'm displaying in the form? I'm displaying the name, mobile, and country. So I'll say private string name, and private string mobile, and private string country. So I'll say country. All right, and right here what I'm going to do, I'm going to generate the getter and setter for this. I'll go here, refactor, not refactor, source. Where is source? Source, generate getters and setters, and I'm going to hit select all, and I'm going to do a generate. Okay, so there you go. This is my student object, right? So let me do Control S, and this is going to be my DTO. So in my student controller, instead of sending this student object, I'll be creating, let me create an object here. I can say student DTO, student DTO is equal to new student DTO, and I'm going to send this student object to here, Control B, and there you go. So right now this student DTO is going to be available inside here, and the model attribute for this is going to be student. This student is actually carrying the student DTO data. So let's say in my student DTO, if I am giving some default value name, I can say Mr. X, some default name. Mobile number, let's say mobile number is not going to be a string, it's going to be a long. So let me change the mobile getter and setter again. I can hit command 1 and I can generate getter and setter for the mobile. Perfect is there. So I can say here mobile. For mobile, the mobile number is something 11111L. Let's say some default data I'm giving to this country as well. The default country is, let's say, India. Okay, command S. So right now, obviously inside the student controller, what I'm doing, I'm trying to create the student DTO object, which is this class object. Right now, this DTO, I'll be sending this DTO just right here, I'll be sending to my art student page, right? So right now inside my art student page, this is going to be the model attribute student. Let me go to that particular page. So this is going to be my model attribute student. And right now I can keep reading the value, right? For name, path is going to be ID. How? For a name, the path is going to be name. So let me do one thing. Let me open that DTO. Let me drag the DTO to this side. And inside the art student.jsp, so the name, I'm going to map it to this, Control V. Okay, so I'll be creating one more. The second field is going to be mobile. So let me create that. Copy, paste it again, Control V. And this is going to be mobile. And obviously for mobile, the path is going to be mobile. So it is going to read the data from here, Control V, mobile. So right now, while reading the data, obviously, remember this student is what? This student is the model attribute. The model attribute is what? Is containing the student DTO. So student DTO, whenever this object will be created, obviously inside that object, the default value for name is going to be this. The default value for mobile is going to be this. The default value of the country is going to be this. All these things, I'll be able to read it just right here. So right now the path will, the path I'm saying name, the path I'm saying mobile for mobile. So for this text box, it is going to fetch the mobile data from this student object. So this is an object, right, that I'm sending from the backend. So from this object, it is going to fetch the mobile data and it is going to display it inside this text box. And similarly, I can create one more text box. So I can do Control V and just right here, I will say path equal to country. Let me copy that. Paste it here, Control V, and there you go. And also we need to have a submit button. So I can say input type equal to submit, and let me say value equal to, let me say submit as well. Okay, cool. So right now we have created a kind of form. So now I can drag this to here. Okay, now let me refresh it. Okay, it won't work, right? So I need to save my controller first. Let me wait till the server reload the changes, because this time I need to hit this URL. Okay, and let's see what is going to happen. So right now it is basically reloading, and whether the reloading is completed or not. Okay, so it looks like the reloading is completed. This is a different exception, ignore it for now. Copy that URL, place it just right here, do a Control V here, the URL. This URL is basically for this URL mapping, and this is going to return us the R student page. Now do a enter, and boom, we got a form. The form is really not looking good, but we got our name, mobile, and mobile. Let me go to the form. Let me say name, mobile, and country. There we go, country, refresh the page. Okay, name, mobile, country. I want to give a break after everything. I'll say break here, and obviously I'll say another break here, because I want to give a space after each of this form. Once after the name, here I want to give a break, and here I want to give a break. Okay, so let's do submit. Looks good. Let me also give a break after submit, so I can come here and I'll say br, command S. Let me do a refresh the page. Looks good. Now let me align this particular, let me give a header to this particular form. So I'll give a header to this. Let me, sorry. I just need to give a space after this. Okay, and here let me give a heading. Let me say H1, and this time I will say add student. Okay, and I will not say h1. Let me give h2 or s3. I don't need a big header. I just need a small header. Command S, refresh the page. Art student. Let me align these things to center so I can put everything inside a div. So I'll say div here, and obviously I will cut it, and I will paste it just right here. Command V, Command S, and I'll align this div to center. So align to center. There you go. So inside this div and this div, I have I have my form. So this is my complete form. Okay, I have my form, and also I have a header. I'm aligning everything to center, and there you go. I have something just right here, and all this data are, I'm just reading it from the DB itself. Cool. So right now you can see that I am not displaying the ID. Okay, if you want to display the ID, that's fine. But imagine this art student is going to be used by the user. Okay, let's say I will go ahead and I'll try to add something. Let's say Abhilash, the student name is this, the mobile number is this, the country is going to be, let's say, India. Okay, so right now imagine I should not enter ID here, isn't it? That's why I'm not written the ID field. If you want, you can create one more field here. You can go to student Pojo. Where is that? Here, and not this student. This is basically we are using for our entity. This is the one we are using for our DTO, isn't it? So here you can basically do what? You can create one more field. You can write private integer ID, and you can give a default ID less 1 or something just to populate it in there in the form, and you can generate a getter and setter, create getter and setter, and you can create it after the mobile. That's fine. Do okay. The getter and setter is there. Now you can come back to your form. You can do you can actually copy this many lines. You can come back here. You can do Control V, and basically you can also display the ID, and you can read it from this ID that you have created. You can copy the ID, you can paste the ID just right here in the path. Copy the ID, copy that, and paste it just right here. Okay, instead of saying name, I'll say ID, Command S, and if you'll go to the form, if you'll refresh it, you will have an ID column. But we really don't want to create the ID because this particular box, we don't want to show it to the user. Why the user is going to give an ID for my student? The ID will be automatically generated, and this particular ID will be generated by MySQL, isn't it? Every time we are going to insert a student to our database, the ID will be automatically created because if you remember, where is my DB? Yeah, here, right? This ID. So if, have I make it? I think I have made it auto incremented, isn't it? So if I click on this range icon, okay, I have not selected the auto increment here. I'll select the auto incrementation of the ID. I'll say apply and apply. So right now what will happen, whenever I will insert a new student data just right here, the ID will be automatically created by the MySQL. I don't need to enter the ID here manually, right? The ID will be maintained by MySQL itself. So I do not want my user to fill in the ID for me. The ID will be created by MySQL, right? So that's why we don't have to give this ID field. So for now, let me remove it because this will be automatically generate, and I only want my user to enter the name, mobile, and country. Once you do submit, now this data will be saved inside my database. So right now, if I'll do submit, well, something happened. Now it is going to show our student page. Why it is going to show our student page? Because right now basically whenever we want to do submit, it should go to somewhere. Where it will go, we will decide it just right here, isn't it? So let me make it a full screen. So right now what we will do, let me drag this a little first. Right now, when somebody is going to submit this particular form, when somebody is going to hit submit button, it should go to where? It should go to some URL, isn't it? So let me write action here, and the action should be where it should go. Let's say process student, okay, or save student. I can say save student. Okay, it will go to this URL. right? So right now, if I'll do Command S, if I'll do refresh the page, and once I do submit, you will see, if I'll do refresh, once I do submit, where it is going right now, it is going to save student URL, isn't it? Now this is the URL we need to handle. Obviously we are getting a 404 not found because we have not handled this URL yet. So we have to handle it. So to handle it, obviously we need, so right now our job will be, we will be creating a save student URL, and this save student URL is going to save the student for us, right? We have to create a page. We have to create a page just right here in our controller to handle this URL. So I can just simply copy this URL for now, and just right here I can create another handler method which is going to handle this URL. So I can just copy it, I can paste it again here, and I can copy this save student and I can paste it just right here, and I will update my method name to save student. And obviously I don't want to have the model and model just right here. I can remove this one, and for now let's not return any page. I can say student saved. Okay, I will just return this text directly to the browser. So I'll write @response buddy. So basically I want sorry, it is going to reload the changes. That's okay. So right now I want in my browser this particular line to be printed directly. So I'm writing @response buddy just right now. So right now if I'll do Command S, you will see whenever I'm going to hit the submit button, I will not get this 404 not found page, rather I'm going to get student saved. That's because right now I'm handling this particular URL, save student, right? So right now let me go back, refresh the page. Let me say, let's say Vilas, mobile number is something, country is India. If I'll do submit, oh, it is saying request method post is not supported. Okay, post is not supported. Okay, I just made a get mapping, but why it is posting the data? I have not told it to post the data. Anyhow, let me mention it by myself. Let me say method. Okay, and we can, obviously we have to make this particular method post, because whenever I'll be submitting this particular data, this data I don't want, I'll be creating okay, so let me make you understand in this way. So whenever I'll be submitting this particular data, what will happen? In my database, there will be a new record will be created, isn't it? So I'll be creating a new record or a new resource in my database, isn't it? So basically I'm going to post something. Posting means what? In your Facebook you are posting, in your Instagram you are posting, in your LinkedIn you are posting something. Posting means what? You are creating a new resource. So obviously whenever I'll do submit, this should be a post request, because this data will be created in the DB. But right now, for now, let's make a get request so that you will see everything in the URL itself. Now, whenever I'm placing the data, I'll do Command S, and right now it will be a get request. So this save student will be a get request. So inside the controller, I have written get mapping and I'm handling this URL. So obviously the flow will come here and this particular method will be executed, and this should be printed in my console. So let's see that. Let me rephrase it. Let me say right now Abhilash again, and mobile number is something, India, submit, boom. Okay, right now no error, student is saved. And you can see if I make it full screen, okay, you can see the data. So these are the data. I do have it in my URL. Vilash, mobile number is this, country is India. Let me go back and let me say, Punit, mobile number is this, country is, let's say, US. Submit, you will see the URL, name is Punit. So this is my query string. Query string starts from this question mark, and name is Punit, mobile number is this, country is this. Right now, obviously I'm saying student data, but the data is not at all getting saved, and we have to save it. We have to save it by fetching it from this URL. We have to fetch this data and we have to save it in our database. So that's the next thing we are going to do. Right now, this is just a holo implementation. This is not the right implementation. We are just showing it. We are not actually doing something. We are not actually saving something. We are just printing student saved. That's why it is saying student saved. Right now, we have to write our actual logic here. So write the logic to save the data to the database. Okay, and how we will save the data to the database, because whenever we are doing submit here, see here, the data are there in the URL. See, the data are there in the URL. So with the save student URL, whenever the flow is coming to save student, whenever the flow is coming to here, obviously this particular method will be executed, and I have to basically handle this particular data. I just need to fetch this particular data from the URL, isn't it? This data that I am having, name equal to Puneet, mobile equal to something, country equal to US. I want to get this data from the URL, and I want to set this data to my Pojo. Then once I get a hold of that particular object, then I can save that particular object. For an example, I can keep saying request param, and I can keep fetching the data from my request parameter, which is name, mobile, and country. I can use request param, but why to use that? Spring also provides us a support for data binding. That is what. Okay, for this particular URL, save student, what are the parameter name? The parameter name is name. Name is the parameter. Puneet is the value. This is the key. This is the value. This is the key. Mobile. This is the value. And this is the key. Country, and this is the value, which is US. So we have to have a Pojo where we will have the properties as name, mobile, and country. So if I'll go there, and if I'll go to student, obviously student is not the one. We're using it for entity. We will go to student DTO. So here we have these things. Okay, ID. Obviously the ID we will not be using right now, so forget it. So we have name, mobile, and country. So the name will be pasted from this URL, which will be Puneet, and this Puneet will be binded to this guy name. Okay, right now this Mr. X is the default value, but this will go away and Puneet will be binded to this. The next one, mobile. We have the next one is mobile here. So for mobile, whatever the data that we have just right here, this data will be fetched, and this data will be binded to this mobile value. So to this, that data will be binded. And similarly for mobile, what is that? Mobile is this, and country. For country, this data will be pasted from the country, and if the country and this country matches, obviously the injection will happen automatically, and that data will be binded to this student DTO. So let me close it for now. Okay, let me close the student DTO for now, and let me do one thing. Right here inside the save student, let me only write student DTO and student DTO. Make sure inside this student DTO you have all this field which is matching your parameter name. Okay, the parameter or the URL parameter we are having is here, the name, the mobile, and the country. These three things should match to your name, mobile, and country. Once this thing is matched, then obviously those value will be pasted from the URL and will be automatically injected to your Pojo value. Okay, and that will be all happened by Spring. How it is going to happen? If I'll go to the controller, you just have to need to write student DTO just right here inside the parameter, and obviously Spring is going to create the object of Spring student DTO automatically. We will not create the object for student DTO. Student DTO object will be created by the Spring itself. Okay, so Spring will create the object of student DTO, and obviously it is also going to set the value for student DTO, which is ID, name, mobile, and country. Whatever the data is available in the parameter, it is going to paste all the data. For let's say for right now, the name is available, the mobile is available, the country is available. All this data will be pasted and will be set to these variables. Okay, so now let's see whether that is happening or not. So right now, once so here the dependency injection or the binding, the URL binding will happen by the Spring. So the data will be pasted and will be bind to this particular object. So obviously I'm expecting that right now inside this particular student DTO there should be data. So just let me log it. So I'll say student DTO. So I'm just logging the data. So I'm just making sure with this object right now, all the values are binded. Okay. All the data that the user enter, that data I'm able to have a hold just right here inside the save student page. Once I hold that particular object, I can save that object to my DB. Okay. Saving is secondary thing. Right now, we have to capture the data, isn't it? Once the user is hitting everything, once he does submit, we will capture the data. Okay. And how we are capturing the data? We are creating a POJO, and with that POJO only, we are injecting all the data by fetching it from the URL, and that's it. So now let me log it. So if I'll go back, so let's say Puneet, mobile number is this, country is US. Once I submit, I'm sure the Spring will bind the data here with the student DTO, and I'm just trying to print it just to see whether the data has been injected to my student DTO property. So let me do submit. So you can see I'm just getting a student DTO object, but I cannot see the data. So let me go to student DTO and let me create a toString. So right click, I will go to source and I'll create a toString. Okay. So I'll do generate. So the toString has been generated. Let me do Control S. So let me rerun this particular program and let's see whether the toString is working fine or not. Let me go back right now. Let me do a submit, and you can see the ID is 1, the name is Puneet, the mobile is something, the country is US. So the data is getting binded perfectly. You might be wondering where from the ID is coming. Right now we are not inserting the ID, but if you remember, we have given a default value to ID, which is 1. So let me remove all the default value so that we will not get the default value. This is just to show you that the two-way data binding is happening. So this value will be loaded whenever the form is loading, isn't it? So right now we don't want this default value. So let me do Control S. So obviously right now this value will be null, 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 and null, because obviously we are using integer default value is null, string default value is null, country default value, this particular default value is null. So all this value will not be available just right here. Let me do a refresh. So only mobile is saying 0. That's because the long default value is 0. So when the object of student DTO is getting created, you can see inside the student controller, whenever I'm basically, showing this particular form, where I'm showing this particular form here. So add student page, and it is showing the add student page, which is this one. So while showing this particular form, I'm creating the student DTO object, and I'm sending the student DTO object to here to this particular page, add student page, using a model. So when the student DTO object will be created, the default value for all the variables are assigned, and the default value for the mobile field, the default value is going to be 0 because I have written long here. So I need to change it to a wrapper class, because this is obviously a class and the default value will be null for mobile. So right here, get mobile and set mobile, let me remove it and let me change it to a long. Let me create a new getter and setter, and let me create it before after the name, and let me do OK. So get mobile and set mobile is right now created. This is changed to long and long. Right now let me do Command S. Let me wait till my server reload the changes. I will refresh the page and you will see something. Once I refresh the page, the default value is gone. Right now I can say the name is Abhilash, mobile number is something, country is India, and once I do submit, what will happen? Obviously this is the method which will be get called, because once I do submit, it will go to the save student page, and save student is going to handle by this particular guy. And just right here, I'm trying to extract this data, name, mobile, and country, and I'm trying to bind it with this object. So right now here is the data after binding. You can see that because I'm trying to log it just right here. So ID is null because obviously the ID, the user has not posted the ID, he has not entered the ID, so ID is null right now. The name he has entered is Abhilash, the mobile number he has entered is whatever, the country he has added is India. So let's say if he is changing it, let's say name is whatever, the name is Felix, the mobile number is something, and the country is, let's say, UK, and if I do submit, you will see I am able to get a hold of that particular data, Felix, mobile, country. So right now, here I have a hold of the data. So right now, this object, this student object, I need to take and I need to save it to my database. These are the data I have already captured from the user. Okay, the ID will be automatically generated by my MySQL. Okay, my database. I already have captured all the other data. So let me push this data to the database. And for that, I need to write my DB logic just right here. As I said, write the DB logic to save the data to the database. Basically, save the data in the sense, save the data means save this object. Okay, this is having my data. Now I will be saving this object to my database. Hopefully it is making sense, and let's do that right now. Let's save this particular object to our database. So whenever we will fill in some data, whenever we do submit, we will not say student data saved. This is fake, student saved. We are just faking it. Right now, let's actually save the student to our student database. So we can see whatever the data the user is entering, those data will straight away go to our database, which is this one. Here the data will go. Okay, stay tuned.